Hi. Picture this. You've just met someone. He looks you in the eye, shakes your hand, and smiles, but 10 seconds later, his name has already vanished from your mind, as if it had never been there at all. You think I'm just absent-minded or bad at remembering names. No, it's not absent-mindedness, it's not a coincidence. It's a psychological profile, and it reveals a lot more about you than you realize. Wait. What if I just don't give a damn about the other person's name? I didn't actually intend to memorize it in the first place. And there's nothing wrong with that. If I need to interact with that person again, I'll simply ask for his name. I admit, there is a certain segment of people, which I can already see reflected in the comments, who feel this way. But what if we set that perspective aside for a moment and look at the issue from a different angle? Today, we're exploring 6 hidden traits of people who easily forget names. And I guarantee that by the end of this video, you'll view your own way of thinking in a completely different light. Here's what you've been told your whole life. Forgetting names is rude, a sign of selfishness. That you simply aren't listening. Let's shatter that myth right now. Science says otherwise. Neuropsychology says otherwise. And life itself, if you pay attention, tells a different story too. People who easily forget names often have a unique type of brain. A brain that works differently from most people's. Deeper, faster, in a unique way. But there is a price to pay for this, and we are going to break that price down in detail. Hit the like button and subscribe. Let's dive in. First trait. An engrossed mind. In his book Thinking, Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman describes 2 modes of thought. Fast, intuitive thinking, and slow, analytical thinking. People with a dominant system 2, the slow, conscious, analytical mode, often overload their working memory and miss small details, like names. They aren't listening to you, they are listening to themselves. You meet someone, and they state their name. At that moment, your brain is already elsewhere. It is analyzing their gestures, their energy, and their gaze. It is building a model of that person before they have even finished speaking. The name gets lost in that stream. This is called cognitive overload. Your brain is processing too much information simultaneously, and the name, being the least emotionally charged element, is the first to slip away. It isn't selfishness, it is a characteristic of a highly active, analytical mind. Such people are often brilliant observers. They notice things others miss, but the price they pay is forgotten names and lost keys. The question is not whether you are listening, the question is at what level you are listening. The second trait. The emotional filter. In his book The Emotional Brain, Joseph Ledoux demonstrated that emotional memory is formed differently than declarative memory. Without an emotional anchor, information doesn't make it into long-term storage. The brain remembers what it feels, not what it hears. Be honest. Do you remember the name of the person who impressed you, who struck a chord, who stirred something inside you? Yet the name of the person who was simply there has faded away. It is no accident, it is the architecture of memory. The hippocampus, the memory center of your brain, works in tandem with the amygdala, the center for emotions. If emotions aren't engaged, information doesn't stick. A neutral person, a neutral moment, a neutral memory. People who forget names often inhabit a rich emotional world, internally calm on the outside. A storm within. And this storm consumes everything superficial. A name devoid of emotion is merely a sound, just a sound. A third trait. Visual thinking. In his book The Mind's Eye, Oliver Sacks explores individuals with various types of visual perception and demonstrates how different modes of information processing shape vastly different cognitive profiles. These people think in images, whereas a name is simply a word. There are those who think in words, and others who think in images. For a visual thinker, a name is an abstraction. An empty sound, devoid of image, form, or color. But a face represents data, a story, a living subject that the brain instantly scans and stores. Such people might recognize your face in a crowd a year later, yet fail to recall your name. It is not a sign of disrespect, it is simply a different language of perception. Artists, architects, designers, directors, there is a disproportionately high number of people among them who forget names because their brains are optimized for a different type of information. They see the world differently, literally. The fourth trait. A distracted presence. In the book Wandering Minds, Michael Karbelis explores the phenomenon of the wandering mind and its role in creativity and planning, explaining why distractibility is an evolutionary advantage rather than a weakness. The body is here, but the mind is already elsewhere. Have you ever spoken to someone and felt that they weren't really there? They look at you, they nod, but they aren't present. It isn't rudeness, it's a wandering mind. And this is one of the most underrated traits of modern humans. Harvard studies have shown that people spend nearly 47% of their time thinking about things unrelated to what is happening right now, spending almost half their lives somewhere else. And in that somewhere else, your name doesn't exist. But here is the important part. A wandering mind is not a defect. It is an engine for creativity, planning, and problem-solving. IT is the brain's default mode network that generates ideas while you remain silent. The price of this gift is presence, or rather, the lack thereof, and your name falls victim to someone else's creative process. The fifth trait. A deep interest in substance. In her book Quiet, The Power of Introverts, Susan Cain describes how introverts and deep thinkers focus on the meaningful content of an interaction rather than on social formalities, such as remembering names to them. Who you are matters more than what your name is. It is a paradox. People who forget names are often the most intriguing conversationalists. They want to know the real you. They are interested in what you think about death, money, and the reasons behind what you do. A name is just a label, and they don't collect labels, they collect people. It is an interest in essence rather than attributes. Psychologists attribute this to a high level of openness to experience, one of the big 5 personality traits. Such people see beyond the surface, they seek depth. Even as you state your name, they are already reading your soul. The name might come later, or not at all, but you remain. A sixth trait. High cognitive load as the norm. In the book Your Brain at Work, David Rock explains the limitations of the prefrontal cortex and working memory. When cognitive load is high, the brain sacrifices secondary information, and names are the first to fall into this category. Their brains are constantly operating at their limit. One final point, and perhaps the most important one. There are people whose brains never rest, not at night, not even in silence. They plan, analyze, rethink, and anticipate. It is not a choice, it is their default mode of operation. For such people, working memory is constantly occupied. It is like a browser with 100 open tabs. And when new information arrives, someone's name, for instance, the system simply lacks the resources to process and store it. It isn't laziness, it is the overload of a system working too hard. Such people often achieve a great deal. They think faster, see further, and feel more intensely. But they forget names. And where you left your phone, and what you wanted to say 3 seconds ago. It's not a bug. It's the flip side of a powerful processor. You were listening to all this, and something inside you recognized itself. Maybe you've been angry with yourself for years, thinking something was wrong with you, that you were inattentive, cold, or selfish. But wait, you aren't cold, you're just different. Your brain operates in a mode that most people don't understand, because most people don't look that deeply. And yes, it creates awkwardness. It creates moments where you blush because you've forgotten a name again. But beneath that awkwardness lies a gift of depth, of vision, of true presence where it really matters. The question isn't how to remember a name. The question is how to accept yourself as you are and learn to work with that music, rather than against it. 6 traits, 6 portraits of a single type of mind. Engrossed, emotional, visual, wandering, deep diving, and overwhelmed. This isn't a list of flaws, it's a map of your inner world. And you know what? The people who change this world, scientists, artists, philosophers, creators, most of them forgot names because they were occupied with other things. They were building something inside that would later manifest on the outside. So, the next time you forget someone's name, don't be too hard on yourself. Just remember, a brain that forgets names often remembers what truly matters.